Alright, just to review one more time, you can take an Illustrator file, copy it, go into Photoshop and say paste, and paste it as either a smart object, which is going to give you this result, sorry, meaning the Illustrator file, or you can say paste and choose to make it path, which is, oops, go to the path menu, you can say path, and you want to make sure there's nothing selected, see, so it gives you a brand new work path. And that's how I got all of these. Now what I do is I scale this now to fit the diagram. We don't need that layer. So this is what I got. Pretty much everything. And then I took it apart. Now to take it apart, it's not that hard. Let's go to this one. If I take, let's say I just picked up that path, which is the cricoid cartilage. If I say Command X, so it gets rid of it, or I could say edit cut, or even copy. Just leave it there and say edit copy. Now I want to make a new layer to put that on. I have to have a new path layer to put it on. And then I can say paste. What's nice is it puts it right in register for where it was. So if I put both of these on, if I select both, you can see there's no misregistration there. So I'll label this cricoid cartilage to make sure I know it's there. So this layer totally is really there just as a guide to help me line up to make sure everything stays in register from the original. Now if I go to my layers, I'm not seeing anything other than my path. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layers, I'm going to say make a new layer, and I'm going to make that layer, I'm going to call that layer, for lack of a better term, tracheal lining. So what that means is I can now take my paths, and I have this I've made, this path called tracheal lining. You notice it's a combination of the cricothyroid membrane and the tracheal lining. And when I say down here at the bottom of the path menu, I say load path, it now changes it to a selection. Okay, so I'm sorry, I clicked on Illustrator accent. So now it's a selection. So I'm going to find a color that's going to represent that tracheal lining. Maybe I don't want quite so much blue in it, but I do want it cool. A value maybe of 65. And now I'm just going to say edit. Make sure I have my path selected, my blank path, and say edit fill, and say use the foreground color, which is the one we just made. Say OK, and now you got it. Now let's go back to the path and let's make another layer. Let's make the cricoid cartilage. So a couple things. I want to drop the selection, so I can say Command D for drop the selection. I want to make a layer above this because the cartilage is going to be in front of that lining. I'll make a new layer. I'll call it cricoid. And I'll go back to my path window, my cricoid. You can barely see that little line. Maybe I should make this a little bigger. There's that outline of the path. I'm going to go change my color. Now I don't want, I tell you what, even before I do that, I'm going to save that color just so if I need it. So I'm going to try to stay organized here a little bit. I'm just going to drag it and how to do is hold down the Option key now. Oh, there you go. I just have to click in the swatch. Say tricky aligning. Let me cancel and show what I did. I want to save the current foreground color, so I just clicked inside the swatch, and it asked me to give it a name, just in case I need this later. Alright, so I can use the swatch while I'm there. No, I can't because that went away. You can pick a color from the swatch for the cartilage. Again, I'm going to come over here though. I like to see this better. So I'm going to use the same color I used for the lining, except I'm going to go to a much brighter value, much lighter value, and maybe even a little less saturation, less blue. Say OK. Now the cartilage, the cricoid cartilage is in the path. Let's check things out here. I've got a layer that's blank and empty waiting for it. I've got the path selected. If I use this button, it basically says fill the path with the foreground color. So now I've got my cartilage right there where I want it to be. And it's done. So I'll go back to my swatches one more time, click and say cartilage. So any of the cartilage I make for the rest of the project, I can go pick up that swatch. So let's make some cartilage since we need quite a bit of it. What do we got here? So again, I want to make a new path, a new layer. Let's call this the thyroid cartilage. Let's go to my paths. Do I have a thyroid cartilage? Yes, I do. And then I'll do the same thing. So you notice the thyroid cartilage actually has a couple of paths inside it. One is the big shape, and then this is what I used in Illustrator to make kind of a hint of a tone there. I might not use that in Photoshop, or I may choose to use that as well to help me. Okay, so we also need a regular, like these are all my cartilaginous bands. So I'm just going to pick this one. This is the one I actually modified this a little more than the Illustrator file to kind of make it look more dimensional. And by selecting it, it's now going to be the only one filled instead of the entire layer. And what I did was I tried to force the illusion of the roundness and to get rid of the, or to make the corners look like they were going around, wrapping around the tracheal lining in the C, the letter C-like formation it does. So I think what I can do is make this, and copy it and move it around and duplicate it and manipulate it to make the rest. So I'm not going to bother making any other. But I've got now a general set of what I need. Now what else am I missing? Oh, the hyoid bone. Okay, now the hyoid bone, obviously different color. So I'll go back here. I don't like getting any green in my bone. So I'm going to turn up my saturation so I can see other colors. I'm going to favor a little more towards the orange gold color. Now I'll take the saturation down and the brightness up a little bit. So it's kind of a combination of, all right, and now I'll got to make sure I have a layer. So see, this is my, oops, see, I put my cartilage on the same layer as that. So here's what I can do to fix that. Hide the tracheal lining, leave this. So my thyroid cartilage has both things, right? Okay. So I'm going to say edit, cut, and then I say paste. And now it pasted way out of register. Let's see if I can say edit paste special, paste in place. Okay, so now it's its own layer, but it was pasted in register. Okay, there's a very subtle difference here. When I'm working with layers, which are raster based, I can have, when no layer is selected, if I have something on my clipboard and I say paste, it automatically makes a brand new layer. When I have paths, if I have a path on my clipboard, if I don't have a blank path, it will not let me just paste the path. I have to make a layer for the path first, then I can paste it, or I have to choose an existing path. So kind of a subtle difference, but something to keep in mind. Okay, let's go back to what I was trying to do with the hyoid. Okay, so I don't have a, need another layer called my hyoid bone. I'm going to come back to my path here. What did I do? Did I get rid of my... Somehow I got rid of my hyoid bone by accident. So let's make a new layer for it. Or let's do this. I'm just going to select it. This is that original collection. I'm going to select it and say fill. And again, I've got other paths in there if I want to try to use them to help me later, but for right now we'll take that off. And now we've got the base, if you will, of pretty much everything we need. You know, we could add some other cricoid muscles, or we could add the other cartilage. But right now we've got a base, and this is what I'm going to use to build.